Hello clanmates, my name is JC Wolsey, or if you'd prefer, the Rift Wolf. So this is my first time making a video like this, where I'm talking to you from a script, rather than just showing you whatever game I'm currently being bad at. Also, real quick, these little sprites that you will have seen in my Darkest Dungeon video, they were made by an artist on Instagram named Azora Luchador. Sorry Azora, I don't know how to say it, you're still awesome though. I've commissioned her several times over the last couple of years, and I love her style. Plus, she's friendly. Win-win! But onto the actual video. Today I want to talk to you about a game I adore. For me, it's right up there with Bloodborne, Dead by Daylight, and Sonic Adventure. That's childhood nostalgia. Inscryption. If you don't know Inscryption, then, how did you find me first? But I'll explain it anyway. Inscryption is an indie roguelike card battle escape room game with a weird JRPG section. You move a wooden figure up a map, choosing paths and events that give you new cards with cute or fearsome animals on them, buff existing ones, or straight up murder small creatures to enslave their souls within other animals that you see more value in. Pretty sure that's how serial killers start out. And make deals with literal Satan. Seriously, this is all framed as our journey through the woods to Leshy's cabin, meaning that we slaughtered animals and people, if you count the boss fights, along the way. For what reason exactly? Anyway, if you fail to beat any of the fights, he snuffs out a candle, lose them both, and he murders you. The first time this animation happens, it's actually spooky as hell. Then he makes you use a random selection of the cards that you've collected along the way in that run to make a new death card, and shoots you with his camera gun. Then the game starts over. You can also get up from the table and solve puzzles around the room. The puzzles unlock new cards, items, and even an extra life. He says it's cheating. Sure, bro. I don't need to go through the rest of the game's other two acts for this video though. This video is all about Kaycees Mod. It sounds like it's fan-made, but it's actually an official expansion made by one of the developers of the game in the game's universe, not the developer of the game in the real world, but also, yes, the real developer because he made the game. Yes, I know I just talked like a bowl of spaghetti. Well done if you actually understood that. Kaycees Mod takes the first act of the game, removes some of the more overpowered mechanics like Leshy's trials for the final boss, which could basically guarantee a win if you got both Ambidextrous and Magpie's Eye, most of the puzzles in the cabin, so no special dagger or squirrel totems here, and it also adds challenges. This is finally the reason for my video today. I played through all 12 challenge levels and got all the achievements in Inscryption, except for one. Inscryption's hardest challenge, Skullstorm. There are 15 challenges, 11 of which are unlocked as you play through the different challenge levels. A challenge level is basically just a number that increases by 10 with each successful run. The challenges have different values associated with them, and you can pick any combination of challenges to equal or exceed the current level to move on to the next. The Skullstorm achievement requires you to put on all 15 challenges and beat the final boss. Just so you know, challenge level 12, the highest level the game gives, is for 120 points. All 15 challenges together total 250. So, if that number is a measure of difficulty, Skullstorm would be twice as hard as beating the base version of the expansion. To be honest, there's only one challenge that's really a problem, so I'll cover that one last. The challenges are: no hook. This one's fairly simple. You don't get the angler's hook, so you can't steal any of Leshy's cards. Smaller backpack means that you can only have 2 items instead of 3. Cloverless removes the clover that you get by default in Kaycees Mod, so you don't get to re-roll any of your card choices. Expensive pelts just doubles the cost of the pelt cards that the trapper would sell you, but you do still get one of them for free. Totem bosses gives all of the bosses a totem for their most used creature tribe. Canine for Prospector, Avian for the Angler, and Reptile for the Trapper, and then Insect for Leshy himself. Tipped Scales deals you 1 damage at the start of each battle, so effectively this means that you have to deal 6 damage to Leshy. All totem battles will turn every regular card battle encounter into a totem battle, so you won't see any of these, you'll only see these. No boss rares. Guess what? You don't get rares from bosses. Shocking, I know, who would have guessed? The cards that you are offered at the end of a boss fight will just be regular ones, as if you'd gotten a normal card choice encounter. More difficult makes each battle encounter have more cards with better sigils. I'm not really sure what it means by better sigils, but it definitely throws more cards at you. Leshy usually runs out of cards after a couple of turns. When that happens, you'll see a skull in the corner of the screen to let you know when the challenge is taking effect. From what I can tell, it won't happen on the first battle in your run, although I could be wrong. You also get 2 copies of this challenge, so you can add more difficulty to the more difficult difficulty. Single candle is another fairly obvious one. You only get 1 life. No second chance, although this challenge is completely irrelevant for reasons I'll go into later. Annoying Starters gives all 3 cards that you get in your starting deck the Annoying Sigil, meaning anything that you put in front of one gains 1 extra attack power. Because, you know, if someone's annoying you, then you just want to punch them in the face. Squirrelfish is an interesting one. This one swaps out all the squirrels in your deck for cute little mermaid squirrels who have the Waterborne Sigil. All this basically means is that your squirrels can't be used to block hits. It's also worth noting that it does not affect the emergency squirrel item. That one will still give you a regular squirrel. Final boss. With this one, you won't be fighting everyone's favourite dirty old man. Instead, if you've played the base game, do you remember Grimora's attempt to have a boss fight? Well, Royal Dominguez says, "Arr, move over, Leshy, you landlubber, it be my turn." And we finally get to play the fight Grimora wanted to give us. He's similar to Leshy, but with stronger cards and a final phase with double the power of the moon. And finally, the main reason this achievement is so difficult. Grizzly bosses. Any of you who've had a great run in the first couple of playthroughs of Act 1 may be familiar with the dreaded phrase, too fast too soon. Well, hey, guess what? This 50-point challenge turns the game's way of extending Act 1 into a mandatory mechanic in every single boss fight. Yep, Grizzly Bosses takes the first 3 bosses' second phases and slaps 8 Mighty Elite Grizzlies on the board. Having this challenge on means you pretty much have to work towards beating it from the very beginning of your run. Every move and choice you make has to be done with this in mind, because if you don't, then you'll quickly be destroyed by the angriest Care Bears in the world. With that in mind, let's move on to the strategy. So, your first choice is, of course, what starter deck do you want to choose? Well, Vanilla is just that. It's the basic deck. It's not really going to help you here. It has no real sigil power and only average cards. Waterborne is just generally weak and has no blocking power whatsoever, especially with the Squirrelfish challenge on. The high cost deck messes with positioning because of the Moose's hefty sigil. My favourite deck of Ants can't use the attack boosting campfires, which are an important part of this challenge. Most of the Bone deck can't be used on turn 1, and the one that can isn't really all that strong. With the right setup, the no-cost cards can technically be viable, but it's a little hard to be consistent. On the subject of consistency, the Curious Egg deck has none, and is probably the worst for this challenge. If you don't know, the eggs will only hatch once you have a card of each of the 5 tribes, and cards with power and health ranging from 1 to 5. You'll spend more time setting this up than preparing for the Grizzlies. Admittedly though, what they hatch into is really cool, so if you're not doing the challenge, I would recommend going and trying out the deck and making them hatch, because it's really cool. So that leaves the almighty Mantis God. With the exception of Ouroboros, Mantis God is arguably the best rare in the game, and as Circle Snack doesn't keep its boost between runs in Kaycees Mod, and you're barred from free rares by the No Boss Rares challenge, Mantis God deck is by far the best and most reliable deck for the challenge. Even the seemingly useless ringworms do actually have a purpose. The campfire events in Kaycees Mod can be used a maximum of twice. The first boost is free, and the second boost has a 50% chance to kill your card and remove it from the deck. However, if the card killed is the ringworm, well, the survivors all die, and thus make every following campfire completely risk-free, meaning you're free to buff our Lord and Saviour Bug Jesus to be a true deity of world-breaking destruction. You want a minimum of +2 attack to your god. That will make it so you can turn 1 win any of the regular battles along the way, but ideally you want +6 attack to make it able to kill the Grizzlies right away. You'll also win any battle that you can attack a single lane with. At that point, the only real threat to God is the Shark Quill Sigil, as it will kill your Mantis no matter how hard he hits. Easy solution? Health Flames. Even just the one double flame is enough to protect our Insect Messiah. But what if the campfire gives a double buff to the pathetic ringworm? Surely that wastes the next campfire too. Well, that would be the case, but now let's talk a little physics for a second. Specifically, my favourite theory, the multiverse. Not going into detail, the multiverse theory states that every decision you make, the alternative choices are played out in a different dimension. Well, we're going to be traversing the multiverse to make sure our run is as perfect as can be. Anytime you make a mistake, get a double buff on your ringworm, or even just don't like the cards that you get offered, simply press escape, return to the main menu, and continue your run. It will return you to the last point on the map before whatever encounter you quit on. The RNG of the game is set in stone once the map is loaded, so you will always be offered the same cards at encounters, draw the same cards in battles, and randomly select the same cards at deck trial caves. The one exception to this rule is when a map is first placed down at the very start of your run and after each boss. Reloading at these points will place a new randomly generated map down. This is especially good for the first map as it reshuffles the trader encounter, so if those first 8 cards she offers are bad, then you reload and try again. Knowing this means no matter what happens, you will always be able to decide on your best possible option. So, what are your best options? Your card choices are going to make or break your run, so here are some things to look out for. If we're focused on Mantis God, then you probably want to give him the unkillable sigil, if possible, and there's only one card capable of giving that, the Cockroach. This sigil will mean you're never out of a Mantis God once you've played it. Killed or sacrificed, it will drop right back into your hand. You could also make good use of the Fecundity sigil from Field Mice. That'll duplicate your carry card. Unfortunately, it doesn't do it infinitely the way it does in Act 2, but it still gives you a second copy, which could be useful. Things to be careful of are the cost of your cards. There's a mechanic in the game that means you will always draw at least one playable card in your first hand, which means you will always have a 1 or 0 cost card at the start of the battle. You can manipulate this to mean that you draw the Mantis God first turn every single time. Simply pick no other 1 or 0 cost cards. You'll be losing one copy of your ringworms to the campfires, and the second one can be thrown in a bone altar if you encounter one. Alternatively, if you find a magpie card, you can take its sigils and give them to the remaining ringworm. That way, if you draw it, it will allow you to search the Mantis God right away. Other cards that are helpful besides giving their sigil to the Mantis God include Corpse Maggots, which can help to block in a tight spot. The Bell Tentacle, placed in the far left spot, will be a 4/3 card, so can be a valuable source of damage. Direwolf is a risk due to it being a 3-cost card, however its double strike sigil can be very effective. I personally would avoid the regular Direwolf and pick up the cheaper Pup instead. It will also give you a bone and become a fully grown Direwolf after a turn. Also, side point, on the subject of Direwolf, I was looking through some Inscryption mods, real ones, not this expansion they called a mod, and this guy made one that removes Direwolf, and that's all it does. Dude, what's your problem? Direwolf is awesome, and look at the baby one, he's so cute. Oh, he digs up a bone. Dig, 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 dig. Who's a good boy? Boop! Really though, when using the Mantis God deck, all you care about is your big bad bug. Make him hit like a truck and take hits like a tank, and choose him a sigil you feel will help out. Avoid Corpse Eater though, because you might not get to control the positioning. Unkillable is probably the best. Double Strike or Bifurcated Strike are great too. In fact, if you're confident in your ability to keep the god alive, they could actually even be better than Unkillable, as they'll make it hit twice in the same lane. With 6 or higher attack, that means Grizzlies will die and then you'll deal enough damage to win. The next important thing is items. First off, the Squirrel and Pliers that you get given to begin with will not help you in the slightest against Grizzlies. Use them in the first battle and look out for items on the way. Your best friends are as follows: a combo of Magical Bleach, unlocked by completing the first painting puzzle, and Harpy's Leg Fan. These two together will remove all the Mighty Leap sigils from the Grizzlies and allow your creatures to fly over them. A skinning knife bought for 7 teeth from the Trapper, or a pair of scissors can remove one of the Grizzlies and allow your Mantis God or other sufficiently powerful cards to attack directly. Be certain you kill in one hit though, because if not, there will be another Grizzly coming to ruin your day. Finally, Wise Clock, unlocked from the second painting puzzle. It will rotate all the cards on the board clockwise 1 space. As long as you have the far left space empty, that will open up a lane for a direct attack for a card on the middle left slot, or a Mantis or Mantis God in the middle right. An honourable mention for items is the third painting puzzle item, Magpie's Lens, which will allow you to search your deck for a card. However, if you're building around the Mantis God and have only it as a 1-cost card, you shouldn't need the lens, but it's admittedly far from useless. If you don't have any of these items, then use them immediately and try for another. Getting a Pack Rat early to use its Trinket Bearer sigil is also a viable strategy to cycle items without having to get more than 1 item event. Just remember that you need to have a full pack of, because of a smaller backpack, 2 items to be given the rat. Last pieces of advice to bear in mind would be to keep your deck consistent. You don't want to be getting dozens of cards. Keep it as low as possible. Picking up some cards for sigils is good, but you need to be thinking about what will actually help you. Try not to risk taking the card choices where you don't get to see what you're picking, meaning the tribe and cost choices. If you don't need it, and you see a bone altar that you can get to, then toss the card. Finally, Goobert. The slime wizard in the jar is your best friend in the whole cabin. Sorry Leshy, but you're really mean to him. Goobert will take a card and make a copy of it. He sometimes makes mistakes, both bad and good. He can alter the attack and health of a card, health down to a minimum of 1, making them weaker or stronger. And he can even change the sigils. The base sigils can't be altered, but any sigils that you've added to the card yourself could get rerolled into something else. Again, that could be bad or good, but regardless, duplicating the Holy God Emperor of Bug Kind is never a bad choice, even if his sigils get changed. Unfortunately, beyond all this, it really does just come down to luck. Using these techniques will undoubtedly improve your chances, but ultimately, if you get bad luck, you won't win. However, if you do get bad luck and can't win, do not click End Run. Leshy doesn't like it, and when you load back in, he will replace one of your pelts with an opossum. Do it a second time in succession, and the last remaining pelt is replaced with a ringworm. In a normal non-grizzly Kaycees Mod run, I actually abuse this to get a ringworm to burn at a campfire, so there's a non-grizzly tip for you too. I'll be honest, I got really lucky really quickly. I fully expected to sit down for this challenge and be spending hours getting bad RNG and struggling against the game, but no, I actually got it in under an hour on my third try. Okay, I researched my strategies first, but I still got good luck. Here, at last, is how my successful run went. I load into my new run and the trader greets me with this. There's a couple of decent options here, but after a bit of deliberation I go for the magpie and adder. Magpie, as I said earlier, is good to pass its sigils on to your second ringworm, and the adder's touch of death sigil can come in handy as it instantly kills whatever it attacks. Next up, I immediately beeline straight for the campfire and throw the ringworm on there. But whoops, it's a double buff, so I pull an America Chavez and hop into another universe where I was brave enough to gamble the life of God. Now with my 3-1 Mantis God, the first fight is an instant victory. I know I said to avoid the card encounters like Cost and Tribe, but campfires are a huge priority, and I messed up by getting overexcited and forgot to use the emergency squirrel and pliers in the first fight, so I took the right path and chose the bone option. 3 cost would be too risky, and 1 cost would mess up my odds of drawing the mantis. I again of course throw the ringworm on the fire, and this time those starving survivors tear it apart and gobble it up. I don't think I mentioned this before, but if the survivors do kill your card, you can't hop into another dimension to save it. The moment you click the bonus for a second time, the game saves. In the next fight, I remember to use my items, but I haven't drawn our star player. That doesn't matter though, because I did draw Magpie. So with the extra scroll, I'm able to play Magpie, search Mantis, then sacrifice Magpie to play Mantis and win again on turn 1. Pretty much all the fights look like this. At the next card encounter, I do make a bit of a mistake. The static card becomes a random card when you draw it, but as it doesn't have a cost, it can be drawn as your turn 1 playable card, even if it turns into a grizzly or a moose bug, leaving you trapped. And at the next campfire, as you can see, no survivors. That means no more problems and free double buffs from now on. Woo! In the next fight, I run into the exact problem I just mentioned. I draw the static card, which promptly turns into a 3-cost moose, and I can do nothing. Fortunately, I do also have Magpie, which means I can draw the mantis next turn by getting a second squirrel, then sacrifice Magpie and win. Told you they were all very similar. I next take another bone card at the encounter that I can't avoid and move on to my first mysterious stones encounter, placing the magpie's hoarder sigil onto the ringworm. It also now flies, which is kind of funny. Next up is our first woodcarver encounter. Obviously you want the insect head as soon as possible to give more buffs to God, but I didn't get that option. I did however get the hoarder sigil, so that's an easy choice. And now time for the first boss, Trappy Boy. I love the Trapper's music, it's my favourite soundtrack in the entire game. Now, at first glance, this all looks pretty straightforward. You summon the worm, get God, summon God, win. But no. At this point I was just sat there thinking, well, this is a reset, because as soon as you take the first life on Trapper, you have to deal with the grizzlies, and I don't have the firepower to win yet. No items, and the direwolf my pup is going to evolve into won't kill a grizzly solo, not without a +1 power boost. So here's where I thought the run would end, but then... the one and only card that could save me. The one that I didn't think much of when I picked it up back at the start. The adder. And just like that, the first boss is down. I take an elk because it's a 2-cost and it won't interfere with the first hand algorithm and move on. The next card is a cockroach for its sigil later, and then I deliberate for a while over getting items or another boost, and finally I decide on a boost. Then in the next fight I thank Mantis Jesus himself that Mantis God was in my first hand, because that sharp quill sigil on all of his canines could have really messed me up. Next up, we pay a visit to Goober, picking up another elk along the way, and of course we have to have him repaint the mantis, and he actually does it perfectly, so we now have two 7-1 bug gods. I'll probably start cutting out most of the normal fights now, because from here on out, they all look like this. It's not exactly varied or interesting. Get God, play God, Exodia, obliterate! Then Rain of Teeth fall into small bowl. Simple. Here I decide I need the items most of all, because I need to start hunting down the right ones to turn 1 the grizzlies. Mantis God has more than enough attack now. He's still vulnerable to sharp quills, but if I'm lucky, that won't be an issue. So I take the right path and I'm immediately rewarded with the Wise Clock. Great, that's all I need to win the next boss fight. But it also gives me a skinning knife, so now I can win the next 2 boss fights. At this point, I was feeling pretty awesome and confident. I had all I needed to get past the next 2 bosses. Uh-oh! Sharp quills! Oh, it's okay. He's here turn 1. We're good. My next goal is to get a decent totem, so I happily head through towards a double woodcarver encounter, avoiding the trapper because he just encourages cluttering your deck. And I pick up a mealworm. This sigil makes whatever you sacrifice this card for gain this card's stats. So in the case of a mealworm, anything you summon using it as a sacrifice gains 2 health. So now I have some protection from quills. The first woodcarver has nothing decent for me, and to be 100% honest with you, neither does the second. Come on, Grandma, I need something good here. I keep the deer head, so at least my elks will give me searches too. The Prospector fight was easy. Mantis God dealt with phase 1 in a heartbeat. Then my hardest decision was, which item do I crush his dreams with? I skinned the grizzly foolish enough to stand toe to toe with a deity and crash straight through to win the second boss fight. Damn it, Leshy, I don't want 1-cost cards. Again, here I don't really think this through. I should have taken one of the ants, as I had the intention of making an insect totem and they would have benefited from that, while the egg does not. Here I decide I'm taking the narrow straight line path through another goober, because you can never have too many gods. I take a second mealworm on the way and give him the copy he painted earlier. I don't know if making him paint an already painted card has any impact on it, but it seemed to work out here as he gives me back an 8-1 bug. Oh no, Smelly! Die! Visiting the trapper's empty post, I get given a free pelt, but I don't want to fill up the deck, even though I have more than enough teeth to pick up several more pelts. So I take his knife as a contingency plan and leave. Next is a lovely Hellfire, so I buff up my strongest god into an 8-5 monster. The next fight presented a problem. I drew not my god, nor the means to search for him. I play an egg to block and pray. Oh, everything's fine. I visit the trader to get rid of the useless pelt for something that might actually help and grab another magpie. After that, another campfire is my choice, to buff up a different god this time. Then, after another easy fight, I go through another double woodcarver encounter, and finally my persistence is rewarded. I got the bug head. I don't use it yet though, because now I'm searching for a good sigil for god, and it'll work on the black goat I picked up before the woodcarvers. Angler fight is up now, and this was a straight wash. 2 mantis gods and the black goat. It was unlosable. Is that a word? Yep. I didn't even need to use the Wise Clock to win here, but I did it just to disrespect Fishman by hitting him with his own teddy bear. Gimme the danger noodle. So now, here we are. One final choice. So I take the stones and make my most powerful mantis unkillable. Then I step up to meet the captain of the ship, Swashbuckling Royal Dominguez. This boss fight music is a close second. The fight starts out great, first turn drawing the hoarding ringworm and giving me the ability to draw the unkillable bug of death, who is strong enough to both take out the mole seamen and win phase 1. I'm rewarded with a bunch of vermin, and then the second phase starts. Almost identical to the first, but this time cannons shoot at you every round and kill whatever they shoot at. If they get a chance to. Finally, he tries to crash his ship into us, but Leshy stops that and turns it into a card. Now, because of our annoying sigils, this ship, the Limoncello, gets +1 attack for each sigil, and I play a second god, so it's at 4. I do more than half its health of 80 though, so I thought it was worth it. Every turn, some of Royal's crew mutiny and defect to your side of the board, meaning until the ship is empty, you get free sacrifices. They don't work as blockers though, thanks to the brittle sigil, which will kill them after they attack. I use the pack rats that I get given to fish through some items and see if I can get anything fun. He kills my second god, but it was unkillable, so it comes right back out to finish off the final card in the game and win me the entire challenge. On to past crappy audio, JC, for my reaction.
I fucking kicked your ass! That's what I've done! Woohoo! Farewell. Thank you. Woohoo! I beat it!
Yes, I sound like a child being given a whole sweet shot, but I was excited, okay? It's a hard challenge, and it was the last achievement I needed to get. After the credits, we get the final developer log entry, and the game is won. Honestly, I got really lucky here. After doing my research on the best strategy, I still didn't get what I needed right away, and I did make mistakes even in the successful run. If you try this challenge, just keep at it. You'll eventually get it. Also, don't feel that you have to beat it. Inscryption is an amazing game. It's good fun, has cool creepypasta style story. I'd happily play through it a bunch more just for the joy of playing it. But for now, GG Leshy. Until the next time.